Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. I am so glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new Extra Sports 1300 app sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for all. Different location today, thanks weather, but still a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the show. And I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You could text it in. You can also find me on X at Gingerly Tweets. Let's start with the Nuggets, shall we? There's a lot going on in the sports world, a lot in the local sports world that I want to talk to. And there's no, I guess, before we get into that, there's no easy place to put this. So one who right off the top, just my thoughts are with the folks at US Figure Skating. And the unspeakable tragedy that happened near Washington, D.C. Has impacted people that are in our community. Obviously, it impacts people in Wichita, and it's just awful, just terrible what happened. And certainly I speak for everybody that I work with in saying that our thoughts are certainly with the folks at U.S. Figure Skating who suffered an unspeakable loss. We're a sports community. I feel kind of a part of it. I interact with a lot of the national governing bodies, U.S. Figure Skating being one of them. We have a unique connection to the Olympic movement in this city. So when a tragedy like this hits, it doesn't have to hit close to home, certainly to feel it. But when it does hit close to home, when people that you know are in your own backyard that are grieving today, it's awful, really just awful. And our thoughts are with the folks at U.S. Figure Skating and the families of all affected of that horrific tragedy that certainly happened. And we make a terrible transition and try to get into this silly world that we live in, and that is sports, and putting way too much importance on sporting events. But that is what we are here to do, and we will press on with that. The Denver Nuggets last night suffered their third straight loss for just the first time all season. We've never seen the Nuggets as much consternation as there has been around this basketball team, and there's been a lot. We've never seen them lose 3 games in a row, and they did that last night. You could probably see it coming given the way that they had played the previous 2 games, although part of the supposed Nuggets MO is that they do bounce back after losses. Well, now it's 3 straight as they lose to the New York Knicks last night at Madison Square Garden. Obviously starting off on the wrong foot, having Nikola Jokic pick up 2 quick fouls, and I want to talk about him specifically coming up in just a little bit. But the big story out of last night, the experiment of Aaron Gordon coming off the bench is over, at least for now. I think the natural assumption would have been that Russell Westbrook goes to the bench, but that was not the case. It was Christian Brown who ended up coming off the bench last night in the Nuggets loss. And Michael Malone talked about it after the game. And one of his big reasonings was because Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic together have formed one of the best duos in the NBA. The numbers back that up. What these two are doing playing together, I understand Michael Malone's inclination to leave them together. And there aren't many other options. So if it was a non-starter for Russell Westbrook to be a non-starter, then I think the natural place you would go is Christian Braun. I mean, factoring everything in. And that's what Michael Malone did. Didn't change too much of that game. Again, Jokic picking up the 2 early fouls just kind of threw the Denver Nuggets off, and they were never able to recover. They had some moments. Michael Malone also brought up the defense of Russell Westbrook over the last month, because if you look at the season numbers, Russell Westbrook has not been, at least in terms of defensive rating, a better defender than Christian Braun. However, over the month of January, not only is Russell Westbrook been a better defender than Christian Braun of the normal 8-man rotation, right? Jamal Murray, Russell Westbrook, MPJ, Gordon, Jokic, Brown, throw in Strother and Watson. Christian Braun is their worst defender over the last month, at least in terms of defensive rating. And even on this season, if you look overall, the difference between Christian Braun and Russell Westbrook, even if Christian Braun is slightly better, it's only just. It's a negligible difference. So what this says to me, my big takeaway from this lineup change, is the Nuggets, and specifically Calvin Booth's grand plan here, is not working. It's not working. The plan was to elevate Christian Braun to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's spot, bring in Russell Westbrook to ignite the bench. And you could argue that neither has really happened or worked to the degree that the Nuggets would have liked. But the good side of this is that Russell Westbrook playing with the starting 5 has been kind of a revelation. But the role that he was specifically brought in to do, it's not what he's best for. And now, because of the way he plays with Jokic, Michael Malone can't bear to put him back on the bench. So the plan here from Calvin Booth, here's Michael Malone in a high-profile game in a big spot, having lost 2 games already over the last few days. Says the best thing for this basketball team is if Russell Westbrook is in the starting lineup and Christian Braun is not. Now, Christian Braun hasn't been terrible. That's not what this conversation is. Because if you look to Orlando, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has a better defensive rating than both Russell Westbrook and Christian Braun. So the Nuggets' ability to replenish what they have lost, which is a natural thing we could discuss. I think it was more, I think the Nuggets were more able to bring back Kentavious Caldwell-Pope if they really wanted to than Bruce Brown. But what we have seen over the last couple of years since the Nuggets won a title is their inability to truly replace what they lose. And we are seeing a Nuggets team that is getting worse. Are they getting worse to the point that they can never win a title? We'll find that out in a few months. And we'll continue to find out because most of these players are not going anywhere, at least the core. And to Nikola Jokic in all of this, because we have this propensity to never criticize Nikola Jokic. First of all, because he rarely deserves it. But it's also because I think Nuggets fans collectively spent so long defending him to the death against Joel Embiid, against Kendrick Perkins, against anybody who would dare say anything less than Nikola Jokic is a generational player. And he absolutely is that. But we should be able to call a spade and look at what's going on. Nikola Jokic is not playing well. 2 of these 3 games last night, Nikola Jokic did not play well. He did not play well against Minnesota either. He looks like he's in a funk. And a lot of times when people think of players in funks, it's a skill, they're not knocking down shots or it's their level of play. I don't think it's anything skill related. I don't think he's just out of rhythm. I think he's kind of worn down. And I look at the way he's played over the last couple of games, and then I listen to some of his comments. He's mentioned on multiple occasions that he's playing the best basketball of his life, something that Nikola Jokic, he is not one to compliment himself. But he said it multiple times. Last night, he mentions, and he was probably asked the question, but the question wasn't, are the Knicks a top 5 championship contender? He just probably asked what his thoughts are about the Knicks. And he said that they're a top 5 team capable of winning a championship. And then you go back a little bit. I'm bouncing around the timeline, but this is all in recent weeks. After the Philadelphia win, Nikola Jokic mentions that maybe it's a sign that the Nuggets are getting serious, that they blew out a team missing its best 2 players, or 2 of its best players, and Paul George and Joel Embiid. It's hard for me not to connect those dots and look at the way that Nikola Jokic is playing. I think subconsciously or consciously, depending on the moment, Nikola Jokic is sending signals to the front office, do something. Because to his comments last night about the New York Knicks, if the Knicks are a top 5 team and the Celtics are a top 5 team and the Cavaliers are a top 5 team, look at how the Nuggets have done against those teams. Last night was a better result than the last time, but they got the season series swept from them by the Knicks. They looked largely non-competitive against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And you look, I don't even have to bring up how the Nuggets have fared against Oklahoma City. Just watch that team. They are unbelievable. Now, I know they lost last night, but SGA still drops another 50 burger. Oklahoma City is so freaking good. And now we're seeing over the last few weeks, the Nuggets trying to measure themselves against the best the East has to offer, and it's not going well. And you're hearing these comments from Nikola Jokic, almost, I'm playing the best basketball of my life. Let's not screw this up. Don't waste this. I think he's worn down. Not with the workload or anything like that. We've seen Nikola Jokic drag a lesser Nuggets team into the playoffs. It's not about that. I just think he's worn down playing on a team that he sees as much as you and I do. It's getting worse. And these plans that the organization puts into place to maintain their championship window are not working out the way that they have planned. And last night's another example with Michael Malone saying, I can't take Russell Westbrook out of the starting lineup. Well, you're supposed to. That's what he's supposed to be doing. He's supposed to be leading the bench. Who's going to get shots for Christian Brown and Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther if you're playing Jamal Murray and Russell Westbrook together? That's not how this is supposed to go. And again, all the credit to Russell Westbrook for making him indispensable, making himself indispensable. But this is not how it's supposed to work. And you saw at times last night, Michael Malone almost grasping at straws, trying to figure out the right combination because it throws such a wrench in everything when he has a lineup like that. But he's got to go with his best lineup. I'm not blaming Michael Malone here. He's given the young guys a chance, right? He's doing Michael Malone to me is doing everything that he can. This isn't last year. He's playing these guys. He's trusting Christian Brown. And Michael Malone talked about how good Christian Brown has been playing. Again, he's not terrible. But it's just not working the way the organization claimed it would. I don't want to say believed it would, actually, because I don't think the changes to the roster over this offseason were part of this grand plan by Calvin Booth. Not exclusively. I think the decision that the Nuggets made this offseason is above Calvin Booth's head. Or at least it's in concert. But the Nuggets, they got to do something. Because they are not measuring up to the teams that they should be measuring up against. Seven 719-24-7-1313, just getting going on this Thursday edition of the show. Coming up next, some big news out of Denver as another professional sports team is going to be calling Colorado home here before too long. Drive Time Sports on a Thursday. Big news out of Denver today, as Denver will be the new home of the new, or be the home of the newest team in the NWSL, professional women's soccer, coming to Denver next year, which seems fast. And it's really cool to see that happening. That was a real grassroots campaign that was going on, and for the people involved, it's got to be an amazing day today as they made the announcement. And there's going to be a lot of other stuff coming down the pike. They got to name the team. They wouldn't even say where they're going to play. I mean, you would think Dick's Sporting Goods Park, but I don't know where the rugby team played in Glendale. Could that be a potential location? So I'll be interested to see how this all comes together over the course of the next year. I know a lot of it has to do with the competition level for these franchises. But me as a sports fan, and I get it, they're mostly serving Denver, but I think having a conversation about it down here is good because they're going to want your dollar. And I don't know what your habits are right now in terms of going up to Avs, Nuggets, Broncos, Rockies, Rapids. I don't know how often you go up to Denver, and I'd be curious to hear for a sporting event. Is this something that is going to earn your dollar? For me, I'll certainly be checking out games. That window of the season, the window of the year, March to November, as you know, I have my weekends mostly spoken for with soccer. But if I have an opportunity, I'll definitely check it out, because with the success of the U.S. women's national team, there are going to be a lot of players that that are going to be coming through Colorado, including two of the Colorado three, right? Mallory Swanson plays in the NWSL. Sophia Smith plays for Portland in that league. Lindsey Horan, which I think is my first order of business if I am this team. I see, and I have no idea if she's willing to. Lindsey Horan is playing in France right now. And the problem is going to be, because it's a natural idea, like, oh, they got to bring in one of those three. They got to bring Sophia or Mallory or Lindsay to play for this team. How awesome would it be? And I agree, it would be awesome. I think they should get all three of them. Here's the issue. Sophia Smith this year, I think, was third in the league in goals. Mallory Swanson, have to catch myself sometimes to not call her Pew. Mallory Swanson was 11th this year, just outside the top 10 this past season in the NWSL in goals. And Lindsey Horan, for the top women's professional league in France, is, I believe, third or fourth in scoring. These aren't the level of players that an expansion team in any league really tends to get. But they should try their hardest over the next year to see if they can swing a deal to get one of them. The problem is they have no assets right now. They have no players. They have draft picks. They'll have draft picks, and there are others. Lauren Millay, who played at Colorado College. So because of how rich the talent pool is and how many soccer players that have spent time in Colorado have gone on to do great things, I would be shocked if there's not a Colorado player, one way or another, either played college here, is from here. I would be shocked if they didn't have one on the roster. But you want to guarantee that people will patron your new soccer club, get one of the big three. Doesn't seem feasible, but one can dream. And it seems like it's funny because the WNBA, there was a push for the WNBA, and that idea is not off the table. But that's why I said it's about the competition level. Like there's Toronto, they wanted to expand into Canada, obviously in the Bay Area. They're going to start playing this next season, and they're certainly a lot of people there that will go to those games, and the people in that part of the country have very deep pockets and are able to pay the expansion fee. I wouldn't shut the door on the idea of the WNBA coming to Denver. If I had to choose, if right now there was a league, you told me there could only be one that comes to Colorado, I would choose the WNBA. That's just my own personal preference. And then obviously the star power in that league, that it's only going to get better with the arrival of Paige Beckers this upcoming season and Juju Watkins soon after that. And I feel like, I don't know, it just feels different than some of these other things in the sports landscape. You know, this NWSL season, it goes on the same time as the Rapids do. Right? So having a WNBA team is it's a change of pace from what you can do in the summer when it comes to sports. And to say nothing of the switchbacks down here, localizing this conversation as much as we can. So the league's in a great place. There are a lot of stars. People are going to come out to watch the first time Portland rolls through town with Sophia Smith. I think it will work. I'm not saying it's not going to be a good thing. But kind of case in point, the Rapids are the lowest in attendance in MLS. Now, a lot of it has to do with their form, right? They're not in a great spot right now, but they are the worst. They have the fewest people coming to their games as any MLS team. And I look deeper into it because, capacities of stadiums vary. So I'm like, is it just because Dick's Sporting Goods Park is small? It's a little bit about that. But even if you look at the percent capacity, how much of the stadium they fill, the Rapids are sixth lowest. So for it to really work, they got to win. Right? Certainly they're coming in at a good time with the not resurgence, the surgence, I suppose, that women's sports are having. It's great. It's great. And you tell me right now, tomorrow I can go to a Rapids game or go to this NWSL teams game. I'm choosing the latter. Unless it's Lionel Messi's rolling through town, and then I have to make an exception. So I'm not saying it can't work. I just think the hotter league right now is certainly the WNBA. I think it would provide kind of an alternative in a way, because there's two other professional soccer teams up and down the Front Range. Yes, I know they're men's soccer teams, but still, it's in the same galaxy, right? It's in the same solar system. To have a WNBA team, I think, could be more popular. And certainly for me, from a consumer standpoint, again, if you told me one or the other, I choose the WNBA. But that option, I mean, it's a false choice. They don't have a choice. They're still trying to get a WNBA team. But it will be, even if they fail in their pursuit of Sophia Smith, Mallory Swanson, or Lindsey Horan, two of those three are still going to make trips to Colorado, and that's going to be really cool to see. And I none of this is me saying it won't work. I think it will. The way Denver is expanding, the popularity of soccer, it'll work for sure. I'm just speaking from somebody like you that has to invest a little bit more to get to these kind of games. I would be more willing to do that for a WNBA team than an NWSL team. I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. With this new NWSL team in Denver, get your patronage. Would you make a trip up? Not saying you have to buy season tickets to the thing, but what's funny to me, and I don't know what professional sports league that they would get during the Avalanche and Nuggets season, but it is kind of funny to me unintentionally that everyone is going after the Rockies window, the part of the year that the Rockies tend to own. NWSL team, you don't have to go to the Rockies. You could come here. We have sunsets. WNBA. Being outside in the summer is overrated. Come into Ball Arena instead. Everyone's trying to pick away at the Rockies market share, which I am certainly happy that teams do. Give me all the options in the world outside of the Rockies. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, would it have meant more to Cam Newton to beat the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl rather than winning the MVP? The answer will probably not shock you. Another professional sports league is calling Colorado home as the NWSL is coming to Denver next year. They had a big announcement today, taking your thoughts on whether you would be inclined to go up to Denver and check it out. Where would it be in the hierarchy? Part-time producer of the show, DJ Michaels. He produces from afar. Texted me and said that both the NWSL or the WNBA either would be more appealing to him to make the trek up to Denver than their male counterparts. Now, I like the NBA more than I like the WNBA. Like them both. Like the NBA a little bit more. I will tell you that I would, and I said it in the last segment, I would go to the NWSL over MLS unless there was one of these, Lionel Messi type players coming through. For the NWSL, I would probably go up regardless of what the matchup is, at least once. With the Rapids, to me, and again, I don't have a lot of evenings that I can do this because the switchback schedule conflicts a lot with the Rapids. But if I happen to have a night where I could go, I would choose the NWSL over the Rapids. And got a text in on the text line at 719-247-1313 that makes a really good point. And I think without even thinking about it, this was part of it. From the 719, really hope games for this team aren't at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. Would hate to see the team with the stain of Cronky Rapids and also have games played 45 minutes from downtown. It will damper the excitement of the new team. Now, I don't know how much stink from the Rapids would permeate towards this team. But the location of Dick's Sporting Goods Park, especially in our conversation, right? I mean, people in Denver might be like, what's the difference? You're making the long trip up I-25. Trust me, it doesn't feel as daunting to go from Colorado Springs to Empower Field or Colorado Springs to Ball Arena or Colorado Springs to Coors Field as it does to go from Colorado Springs to Dick's Sporting Goods Park. And I know in covering games in previous lives of mine that no matter where I was coming from, Denver, Colorado Springs, no matter where it was, it always felt daunting going to Dick's Sporting Goods Park. It's not a great location, and I do think that plays into why the Rapids are where they are in terms of attendance. And I'll localize this even further. Remember some of the consternation around the Switchbacks downtown stadium? I mean, let's be honest. Unless you were exactly in that neighborhood of the old stadium, isn't it a bit easier to get to a Switchbacks game? Don't you like having the downtown stadium now? I would say the majority of people do. I'm not saying it's going to be universal, but I think that move worked out incredibly well for the Switchbacks. Kind of the same thinking, right? But the reason to be at Dick's Sporting Goods Park is because, and they talked about it today, they're going to get their own home, but they're not going to build it in a year. So the idea of playing at Dick's Sporting Goods Park or at I think it's called Infinity Sports Park in Glendale, the reason would be from a practical standpoint, they can't build their own facilities in a year. So, and listening to them today sure doesn't seem like they're at all interested in making Dick's Sporting Goods Park a permanent home. Year 1, year 2, however long it takes them to make their own stadium. Maybe. But I think the texter's point is valid. I think it could dampen some of the excitement in year 1 that people are like, "Oh, I want to check this thing out." And then they're like, "I got to go where?" Obviously, first and foremost, it matters what Denver residents do, right? That's going to be the bulk of their patronage. But I think it's going to work. Is it going to be the biggest thing? I don't know that anyone, even though the Rockies attendance numbers are down, I don't know that anybody that is a sports fan or just a fan of going to games is ever nobody's going to topple the Rockies. There are just too many other things involved that people want to take part in at Coors Field. But how that city's growing, how the state is growing, the popularity of that league, it's absolutely going to work. And people will go. There's just ideal places for them to be. And there is some competition that they have to cut through in order to earn people's dollar. Continue to take your thoughts. 719 24/7 1313. Counter opinion, NWSL. Kaufman in Denver. I wouldn't waste that gas even to watch the Oilers beat the Avs. So, okay. So there's one vote for I'm not going up to Denver. Fair enough. It is a lot of times a daunting, especially now. Can you imagine needing to go to Denver over the last month with the way the weather has been? Where's that light rail we're supposed to get? Is that happening still or no? Anyway. Cam Newton. I can't not bring this up. This morning I think it was this morning. I don't watch the show. I see clips online. Stephen A. Smith, I don't even know the context. It really doesn't matter. I always say context matters. Not in this case. You said what you said. There's no misinterpreting it. Stephen A. Smith asked Cam Newton if he'd rather have a Super Bowl than an MVP. As you recall, Cam Newton, the season where he had a chance to do both, ran along with the Denver Broncos. Right? Super Bowl 50, he was the MVP. And Cam Newton said no. He would not rather have a Super Bowl than an MVP. The guy that seemingly refused to dive on a fumble, a crucial fumble in Super Bowl 50, is saying he prefers his MVP over winning that Super Bowl. Another piece of the puzzle falls into place. What a ridiculous thing to say. What an absolutely ridiculous thing to say. From a guy that says some pretty ridiculous things. What a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, we don't even have to go down all the layers to get to what you and I know about that Super Bowl. I don't know that a ton of people remember Cam Newton not diving on the fumble. Enough do, but you don't even have to go down to that level. Just take it on its face. I don't think Cam Newton is a Hall of Famer, but even if he was on the cusp, what do you think would give him a better shot to get in? He's won an MVP or he's won a Super Bowl. Somebody talk to Dan Marino about how the public weighs MVPs versus rings. Now, Dan Marino is obviously a Hall of Famer. My point is, where's Dan Marino on these Mount Rushmores? Nowhere to be found. This is a sport that perhaps I would say the position more than any other in sport is judged by rings. And the fact that Dan Marino doesn't have one, despite everything that he did, continues to keep him getting pushed further and further and further down. And in some cases by quarterbacks that aren't as good as Dan Marino was. But that's the impact of rings. For any quarterback to say no to a hypothetical trade of an MVP for a Super Bowl is incredibly self-centered. And he tried to, explain himself like, and it just made it worse because the other quotes I saw from it and also what I heard is like, I wouldn't make that trade or I wouldn't take the Super Bowl because the MVP means I did my job. So headline, guy that wouldn't dive on the fumble in Super Bowl 50 would not trade his MVP for a Super Bowl ring. Subheadline, Cam Newton calls out ex-teammates for not helping him win a Super Bowl. I won the MVP. I did my job. That's what I take more pride in. I'm not going to take pride in something that other guys have a say in. Team player Cam Newton, but also not really surprising, is it? 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Michael Malone and Tom Thibodeau were asked last night after the Nuggets-Knicks games about Adam Silver's comments that he's a fan of shortening the NBA's quarters down to 10 minutes. I'll let you know what both coaches said next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on a Thursday. Ryan Kaufman with you. You could watch the show on a daily basis on our social media platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube. The handle is all the same at XTRA Sports 1300. Excuse the background. The background on the live stream. Still working on it. Every time I'm like, I'm going to work on it. And then obviously my preference is to be in studio, and then I'm in studio for a long time and I forget about it. And then I do a show from elsewhere and I'm like, I don't like the backdrop, but streaming the show live, Extra Sports 1300, Facebook, X, all that good stuff. So I talked about this at the end of yesterday's show. Dan Patrick had Adam Silver on, NBA commissioner, talking about how to improve the product. And Adam Silver's big idea, what he is a fan of, is shortening quarters to 10 minutes. And he rattles off Nielsen ratings and viewer habits and all of this kind of stuff that will make most NBA fans' eyes glaze over. Like, I don't know that you're really changing hearts and minds and getting people on your side by talking about the consumer patterns. But I will say the opposition to his idea is appealing to the average NBA fan. Last night, after the Nuggets lost to the New York Knicks, both Michael Malone and Tom Thibodeau were asked about Adam Silver's comments. Michael Malone had some very entertaining comments. He said, I hope we don't go to 10-minute quarters. He said this before the game, by the way. So he was maybe in a decent mood when he said this. Because if he was asked after the game, then maybe you could say, oh, he's just in a bad mood. I hope we don't go to 10-minute quarters. I hope we don't go to the 4-point line. I hope we don't become Barnum and Bailey, where we're just having to do whatever we have to do to keep viewership, because there is a history and greatness to this game and a purity to this game. And I hope we can find a way to stay true to that. The Barnum and Bailey thing is good. It's really good, really powerful, because that's exactly what, I mean, you got to imagine sitting in Michael Malone's seat, that he and his family have given their whole lives to this league, right? You know, his father, and Michael Malone's been a lifer. To hear the leader of your league saying, we're going to try and do all of this goofy stuff to make it more appealing to fans, has got to be borderline insulting. It really does. And the Barnum and Bailey line is really good from Michael Malone. But I think Tom Thibodeau, and he's the perfect person to deliver this message, hit it on the head. He mentioned competitiveness. If we do what we need to do from a competitive standpoint, everything else will work out. Right? When you talk competitiveness, when you talk about compete level, you think of Tom Thibodeau teams. And it's such an on-brand answer for him, but it is 1,000% right. Because this is what I have been saying for weeks about this perceived NBA problem. A lot of basketball fans, sports fans, believe that when they tune in, they are not going to get the best product that they could. Because you could say all you want, because people always debate the marketing thing. Should you be marketing Wemby and Jokic and Giannis more than you're marketing LeBron and Steph? And I'm not saying that that's not a legitimate conversation. But it gets so wrapped up in who you're pushing. There's a lot of really good NBA players, whether some of them want to tune in for LeBron and Steph. Some of them want to tune in for SGA. Some of them want to tune in for Jokic. That's not the problem. Okay. People, I think, have a better understanding in Adam Silver. This is his design. With the rules that he put in place, now almost every NBA team has a star to be able to market. Some are better than others, but everybody has a star. No more super teams. It's not, oh, are the Miami Heat playing? No. Okay, I'm not watching. Are the Boston Celtics playing? No, then I'm not watching. I want to see Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. Those days are gone. Now everybody has somebody. I don't think the issue so much anymore is people not being aware of the talent in this league and that the talent in this league not appealing to them. I think quite the opposite. I think there are plenty of people that understand how good Nikola Jokic is and would like to watch him play basketball. I think there are a lot of people who know how good SGA is and would like to watch him play basketball. The issue is when they tune into the game, they say, okay, I'm tuning in for this star, but what I'm getting around this star player that I tuned in to see is a lack of effort. That's the issue. Tom Thibodeau nailed it. The competitiveness of the league has taken a major step backward. The chucking of threes, the lack of defense that is being played, load management, all of these things tie into one bigger theme, which is you're not getting the highly competitive product that you are tuning in to see. And making it 10 minutes long is not going to do that. This is not an issue. I think Adam Silver is thinking kind of in the mold of his predecessor. I think he's thinking, in addition to all the deep dives into consumer habits, I think he's thinking, if I shorten these quarters to 10 minutes, guess who's out on the court more? Nikola Jokic, SGA, LeBron, Steph, Wemby. It will shorten teams' benches. And maybe if you're a Nuggets fan, that is music to your ears. Fewer non-Jokic minutes, I'm in. But I think part of why he's a fan of this is he thinks the more I can put my stars on the floor, the more they're going to be on the floor, the better off we'll be. And there's some truth to that. But again, it's not the biggest problem. Make the main thing the main thing. The main thing is the stars that you have in this league, many of them will be load managed. Some of them will not give the level of effort that people are tuning in to see. And many of their stars are just going to dribble up to the three-point line and heave it. Play some basketball. That's what Tom Thibodeau is saying, and he's 100% right. But Adam Silver can't say that. He knows it. Can't say it. That's a players' union he's got to negotiate against. That's a product that if he were to admit it, because if he says things like consumer habits, he's basically blaming you. I mean, if we really want to get down to it, Adam Silver is blaming you. He's saying you have the attention span of a goldfish. You can't sit for more than 2 hours. And that's why the NBA is why he's a fan of this radical change. completely ignoring the fact that we sit for not just 3 hours. How many Sundays this year were you on the couch from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m.? I get it. Our attention span, we do look at our phones, we do get up and do other things. But this idea that the NBA can't go past 2 hours, it's like nonsense. Look at football. It eats up our entire day, and we're happy for it to do that. This is not about the length. This is like baseball all over again. It's not about how long the game goes. It's what you are offering us as consumers while we are giving you our time. The NBA product for many people isn't good if they only had to watch an hour of it. Adam Silver is so missing the mark with this. Just play ball. And the 3-point thing, I legitimately think that people won't have as big of a problem with the threes if you can find a way to mitigate some of the other stuff, like the level of defense that's being played, which is to say, and Denver is a perfect example because, again, last night against the Knicks, they cannot guard the perimeter for anything. The defense is not good. I think people like high-scoring games. But they like high-scoring games when they feel like the other team is actually pushing back. Right? No one's complaining about how many points were scored in the Chiefs-Bills game. Why? Because it felt like the defenses of Kansas City and Buffalo were actually trying to stop or actually had the ability to stop Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes at least once or twice. In the NBA, you just don't feel like there's anything these defenses could do to simply guard the perimeter. That's it. That's all they have to do, guard the perimeter. It doesn't sound like the most novel concept, but so many teams, you tune in, they're like, they're powerless to stop it. The Denver Nuggets are one of those teams. One of the things that the NFL has, there are some things that the NBA can never capture. Even if they get a little bit more physicality in the game, they're never going to have the physicality that football does. And we crave that as a society. And I'll let a sociologist read into that and what that says about us. But it's just the fact of the matter. We like the physicality of football. We don't like it when, people are being concussed and everything, but we like, as long as no one's getting hurt, we don't root for people to get hurt, but we like the physicality that comes with football. The NBA can't do anything about the fact that the NFL, your team plays one game a week. That's all you have to make plans for. And if you are such a big fan of the league that you want to watch all the games that week, 3 days. And not even all of the day. Monday and Thursday, you only get one game. So they can't do anything about that. But what they can do is something that I think the NFL still has, which is it looks like everybody's trying their hardest. Right? Teams, players, it looks. And again, a lot of this is perception. A lot of NBA players are busting their hump every single night. But in the grand scheme of things, the perception is NBA players, they don't care. They don't try. regular season's too long. They pace themselves. 10-minute quarters aren't going to fix that. And Adam Silver knows it. But I think it's mildly insulting that he's putting it on the consumer. I get it. We do have the attention span of goldfish. I understand it. Right. But to point it out as the reason, that's not the reason. We sit through Marvel movies. We sit through binge watching Netflix shows for an entire weekend. Don't say it's because we can't sit and watch something for more than 2 hours. That's nonsense. The product you're putting out there is not what it was. And it starts with the competition level. 719-24-7. 1313. We'll continue on with this Thursday edition of Drive Time Sports right after this. Michael Malone and Tom Thibodeau pushing back on Adam Silver's grand plan to fix the NBA, which is shortening the quarters to 10 minutes. Another thing that a lot of people have pointed out, like last night, for instance, tip off was scheduled for 5:30, right? That's what the schedule said. So a lot of people, even though we know that it's never going to start on time, still people settle in at the time that tip off is. And then, like last night, if you watched on ESPN, you're sitting through Kendrick Perkins go on about God knows what, more commercials back. How about, you know, some from Richard Jefferson, and then we'll go to break. And then by the time the game actually tips off, it's like 15 minutes later. Maybe if people could time out when to sit down and actually get to watch the game, maybe that would help a little bit. Maybe you're adding some unnecessary minutes that people are spending waiting for the game to start, listening to pregame shows that aren't Charles Barkley and Shaq and Kenny Smith. For them, I'll sit through the whole thing waiting for the game. For pretty much any other pregame show, no way. When is the game starting? I'm going to sit down and watch it right at tip-off. It's another part. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. It's not going to fix it. So just come up with something else. Brett says, your NFL point is a good one. Thank you, Brett. We have done everything we can to make a game longer. Coaches, challengers, reviewing the highlights. Yeah, and I'm not a fan of those things, but when it comes to the NFL, I'm going to sit through them. Why? Because I am all in on an NFL game. I don't like how long it takes. I don't like the number of reviews there are. But I'll say this for the NFL, they're much more efficient at it than the NBA is. And don't get me started about college basketball. You could run to the other side of town and be back before a college referee crew comes to a decision on a video replay review. But that's what it is. It's not the length of time. It's just not. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. What would you do to fix the NBA product? Adam Silver comes to you and says, okay, you don't like my 10-minute quarter thing. What's your big idea? Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. The Broncos, and I gotta say, the dynamic that's going on right now between the Broncos and the Lions and now the Jets, it's a little incestuous. I mean, let's just call it what it is. So you have John Morton going to Detroit to be their new offensive coordinator. Now, just within the last hour, David Shaw, former Stanford coach, had a role in the Broncos front office. He's going to Detroit to be their passing game coordinator. And in going out the other door is Chris Banjo, who is now going to be the special teams coordinator for Aaron Glenn in New York, whose general manager was just with the Denver Broncos. It's a little much. But this is what kind of comes with the territory of a coaching tree. But it just seems like it's the two spots. So now we have the Sean Payton coaching tree. Extends to Detroit. One branch is Detroit. One branch is New Orleans, at least for now. I mean, former Sean Payton assistants are dropping like flies in New Orleans, but we'll see if there's any there. But there's a branch in New York, there's a branch in New Orleans, and there's a branch in Detroit. Doesn't seem like a lot of other places. So Sean Payton's coaching tree is certainly bearing more fruit over the years, but is not growing to as many different places. It's just kind of weird that it's Lions, Jets. But in a way it does make sense, right? Dan Campbell, now Aaron Glenn. Oh, and then don't forget Chicago as well. I should say that their tight end coach is now Ben Johnson's OC. So a lot of people want Sean Payton's guys. I mean, it outside of Davis Webb, Vance Joseph, and Sean Payton himself, is there another coach under contract now with the Denver Broncos? Is there anybody? I mean, either they got poached or Sean Payton fired him. But Chris Banjo going to the Jets, David Shaw, we hardly knew ye in Colorado, is going to Detroit. ESPN today came out with kind of a cap breakdown of every NFL team, as for 30 of the 32 teams, they can't wait for the Super Bowl to be over so free agency and the draft can get here. But I was looking over the Broncos here, and they are projected to have $40 million in cap space. And I'm not going to theorize, well, if you give 10 to this guy and 20 to this guy, I'm not going to do that. But their cap space is middle of the road, right? The dead cap hit from Russell Wilson is lesser than it was a year before, but it's still on the books. So middle of the road. In fact, right in the middle, 16th. So they're not going to be able to go on a spending spree, but it's not like the Broncos can't address some of their issues. So if we played a little game here, sign one, extend one, draft one, and let one go. Okay, here are the unrestricted free agents for the Denver Broncos. The notable ones, I suppose. Cody Barton, Michael Burton, Riley Dixon, Lil Jordan Humphrey, DJ Jones, Jared Stidham, Justin Stranad, and Javonte Williams. Maybe I should change it to which one of those would you keep? Let's do that. Instead, what one would you cut? Because it could be a different answer. The one I would keep, I think, is DJ Jones, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious. Clearly, Sean Payton is not pleased with his inside linebackers. So Cody Barton would be an easy one for them to let go. Javonte, if the Broncos can just find a back that can pass block, then Javonte Williams is not necessary anymore. That's why he got as much time on the field as he did. He pass blocks. So find somebody that does that, and then you won't need Javonte Williams anymore. Justin Stranad, kind of the same deal as Cody Barton. Jared Stidham, I wouldn't mind. I don't think the Broncos would mind keeping him around, but Lil Jordan Humphrey, don't think you have to keep him. Riley Dixon, in fact, was poor through parts of this year. I just think DJ Jones I don't know if they keep any of these guys. to be honest. But if there's one of the unrestricted free agents that I think the Broncos would be most likely to keep, it would be DJ Jones. Now, how about extending a guy? To me, that's Cortland Sutton. Like in the immediate, I know Nick Benito's extension is certainly looming for this team, but in the more immediate future, I just think that they should lock up Cortland Sutton. I think he did everything that the Broncos asked him to do. It took him and Bo Nix a little while to get on the same page, but it seems like they got it going. Sutton's been productive when he's had a decent quarterback throwing it to him. I just say keep him. And I said this yesterday, Chris Godwin would make a lot of sense. I just don't think that's where Sean Payton is going to go. So you have Sutton. And even Mike Kliss has reported that it's a low likelihood that the Broncos would keep Cortland Sutton and go out and get T. Higgins or Chris Godwin. It's a lot more money than I think Sean Payton wants to commit to that room. And I just think the risk reward, especially with the T. Higgins, the cost benefit analysis, I would say, given everything else the Broncos need, I probably wouldn't pay T. Higgins. I wouldn't. And Chris Godwin intrigues me opposite Cortland Sutton, but again, it's a lot of money to commit to that group. And I just said the Broncos don't have all the money in the world. I do think Alex Singleton, and ESPN mentions him as a potential candidate for release. I think the most change for this Broncos team in a position group will be in the inside linebacking core. I think the firing of the coach means there's going to be a cleaning of the house. And Alex Singleton, people are going to look at his numbers. I'm telling you, you can find another guy like that. You can. And you have Drew Sanders coming off of injury. I think that inside linebacker room is going to look very different. And I think the running back room is probably the second position group that I could see the most changeover being in. And I've said Ekbuka from Ohio State is the guy that I would draft. I think he fits into what Sean Payton wants to do. And you could go forth with Ekbuka, Marvin Mims, and Cortland Sutton. It's pretty good. But any of those unrestricted free agents come back. The Broncos could also draft a defensive tackle, and then DJ Jones would be surplus to requirements. But of that group, I'd probably hang on to DJ Jones. I agree with them. Alex Singleton, certainly a candidate to get released. And I would sign up Cortland Sutton. I don't know if Sean Payton wants to, but I would. 719-24-7. 13-13. Take another break. Back to wrap up hour number 2 with some of your thoughts. How would you make the NBA better if you think the NBA needs to be improved? Perfect segue from Kale McCarr because I want to talk a little hockey right now on Drive Time Sports. So we are one step closer to my dreams becoming a reality. Not for the Colorado Avalanche, but for a team that I probably am taking too much of an interest in. Today, the Utah Hockey Club was told that Yeti would not be available to them any longer because of the Yeti coolers and thermoses and things like that. They're like, yeah, we have a trademark. You can't have it. So Yeti, they won't be the Utah Yeti, which might be my second choice for them. So that they can't do that. And they also said today that they are taking Wasatch, which is the mountain range that they have there. That is out of the running, and Outlaws is back in. So they have 3 finalists for what they're going to call themselves moving forward: Utah Outlaws, Utah Mammoth, and Utah Hockey Club. We are one step closer, people, because Utah Outlaws would be awful. Awful. That is a terrible name. Now, Mammoth, I think, would garner a lot, and I've seen a lot of people on social media are very about calling them the Utah Mammoth, and I don't know that a lot of people in Utah care too much about the fact that there is a team called the Mammoth in the next state over from them. But it would be weird that they're the Utah Mammoth and we have the Colorado Mammoth. But I'm hoping it gets through to them and they just be Utah Hockey Club. And I know team names are for the people that are there in that city, in that state, that are going to those games. What is more Utah than Utah Hockey Club? You already have the localized name. No one else can be the Utah Hockey Club except for Utah Hockey Club. I'm glad that the people at Yeti put the kibosh on Utah being called the Yeti, because it gets us that much closer to what would be the perfect name for a sports team. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me when it sound much cooler, Jaden Daniels, quarterback of the Washington football team. Big fan of it. I hope it happens. Jared Bednar, to more pertinent hockey items. Jared Bednar said today that Valeri Nichushkin will not be back before the Four Nations face-off break, which is a couple of days before Valentine's Day, yeah? 12th through the 20th, that's their Four Nations face-off break. So for the next 2 weeks, no Valeri Nichushkin for the Colorado Avalanche. But he did say that once that break is over, Nichushkin will be cleared and be ready to join the Colorado Avalanche, and there will be an interesting discussion about where to put him. In fact, let's have that conversation here momentarily. But in the meantime, no Valeri Nichushkin, and with Marty Necas and with Jack Drury, some more tinkering is going on with the master tinkerer when it comes to lineups, and that is Jared Bednar. Today, he had McKinnon, Necas, and Lehkonen on the same line. And then he had, obviously, Duran, Middlestat, and Parsonen on the second line. Valerian Nichushkin, by the way, I like those lines. I do. But I think when Valerian Nichushkin comes back, my big thing is I don't want Nathan McKinnon and Marty Necas to be broken up. And I guess I would prefer Jonathan Drouin on the top line. Think I would. But like I don't feel as strongly about it as I feel about Marty Necas staying with Nathan McKinnon for as long as possible. But I like the idea of Middlestat with Lehkonen and Nichushkin. So I guess I would really prefer for Lehkonen to be on the second line and Jonathan Drouin be with McKinnon and Necas. But keep Necas and McKinnon together for as long as they possibly can be. But Nichushkin comes back. Drouin, McKinnon, Necas, Nichushkin, Middlestat, Lehkonen. Avs back at it tomorrow night. Another game with the two new faces. See how it looks with maybe some different combinations. And please, for the love of Pete, score a power play goal. Captains for the Four Nations face-off were announced. Cale Makar will be an alternate captain. He'll be wearing the A for Canada. Interesting to me that Nathan McKinnon did not get that honor. Connor McDavid will be the other, and Sidney Crosby will be the captain. Now, these can be ceremonial. These could be player voted. It's a 8-day event. We don't need to, bring up a big firestorm. But I do think it's interesting that Cale Makar is wearing a letter and Nathan McKinnon isn't. You're going to make a big deal out of this, which all these teams did today. Austin Matthews is Captain America. But to not have Nathan McKinnon over Cale Makar, they made it such a big deal. You would think it would be. And I get the Crosby thing. And then you go McDavid and McKinnon. A little surprising that Makar got it. Not surprising that Mikko Rantanen is wearing an A for his native country. I thought Mikko Rantanen would certainly be wearing one for Finland. So those are the captains, and you can find them all. But that starts up. I'll wait and see till we get closer. I don't know that I'm super jazzed about this event, but I'll take it over the NHL All-Star Game all day. So if that's how we're going to fill our time instead of the All-Star Game this year, I'm all about it. Let's do that. It will be better than that. I don't know if you watched TNT last night. Paul Bissonnette had some comments. He's on that the TNT coverage, if you're a hockey fan, you probably know. And he talked about how he thinks it's risky for Mikko Rantanen entering free agency to move to Carolina. Like it could impact his market value. And I do see his point to an extent, but I don't know that it is a risk, right? You're going to a team that you're having to fit in with. There's not the familiarity. Carolina, as good as they are, they don't have Nathan McKinnon. So from that standpoint, it is a risk. But if Mikko Rantanen is the player that we all thought he was throughout a decade in Denver, he'll be fine. Like, how much shine is going to come off of Mikko Rantanen in a half of a season? To me, if you think that it is a big risk for Mikko Rantanen to go to another team when he's about to become a free agent, then maybe you have some doubts in your mind about how good he is. Because I would expect Mikko Rantanen to become the highest paid winger in the history of the NHL, to get closer to that $14 million valuation because he's not going to take a discount. And there will be a team that could desperately use Mikko Rantanen. I don't see that this is a major risk for Mikko Rantanen. It is by definition a risk because of all these factors. I think he'll still get paid just fine. But the sentiment that he had in terms of why this didn't work out was, why couldn't they pay Mikko Rantanen $100,000 less than Nathan McKinnon and just get it done? And that number would have been at 12, right? A little less than 12. I wonder why too. Because the number that Elliot Friedman has reported is less than 12 million. It's less than 12 million. That reportedly Mikko Rantanen would have inked a long-term contract with the Colorado Avalanche. Biz is in there on TNT saying, why can't they come together on a more expensive deal? You don't even have to do that. He reportedly wanted less than 12. You have to ask Chris McFarland. There's, with everything we found out about this trade over the last few days, this is not Mikko Rantanen. I'm sorry. If you feel like the Avalanche did what was best for them and you like the return and you think Chris McFarland was wise to do what he did, that's fine. But I just don't like the idea that people are putting it on Mikko Rantanen. Like, he didn't agree to a good number. He reportedly wanted less than the 12. The Avalanche did not want him. They felt it was best to move on. That's the thing. We'll debate the return and all that kind of stuff till the end of time, maybe. We're still talking about Nazem Kadri. But this idea that there is some fault on Mikko Rantanen, like he didn't try. He did. The world where they couldn't agree on a deal was a world that is run by Chris McFarland, not by Mikko Rantanen. And I'm with him. I don't understand why they couldn't get this done. My theory is because they're still dealing with uncertainty with Gabriel Landeskog, and as quickly as it seemed Valeri Nichushkin returned from the player assistance program, he's hurt. That's my theory on why they couldn't have it come together. It's not Mikko Rantanen's overrated. I'm sorry, we're not doing that. Too many fan bases do that to stars on their way out. Mikko Rantanen is every bit as good as we think he is. Why couldn't they get the deal done? Why did it have to come to this? I think it's Nichushkin and Landeskog related. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll hit the 3 stories that are driving the show. Michael Malone's team, not great last night, but his comments on Adam Silver's proposed 10-minute quarters thing were very good. A new professional sports team in Colorado, and much more here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in. Thursday edition of Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you. Appreciate you listening or watching the show. You could do both or either. Extra Sports 1300 app. Good way to listen. Sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. And then on our social media platforms is where you can watch the show. Your thoughts are always welcome. And I have a backlog of texts that I will get to in this very hour. 719-247-1313. Oh no, on my television set, it's the Pro Bowl games. I need to change that. I'm not watching this. Anyway, in the meantime, here are the three stories driving the show. All right, story number one is that for the first time this season, the Denver Nuggets have lost 3 consecutive basketball contests. Last night, falling to the New York Knickerbockers by a score of 122-112. In that game, there was an interesting and somewhat unexpected change to the lineup. The experiment of Aaron Gordon coming off the bench came to an end, as it probably should. But instead of Russell Westbrook going back to the bench, it was Christian Braun that will be coming off the bench for the Denver Nuggets last night and perhaps for a little while. Now, Christian Braun had thoughts and not overly pleased. Said, obviously, I took a lot of pride in having that spot, trying to win that spot, and I'm going to work to try and get it back. That's my job. But whether I'm coming off the bench or starting, I'm very grateful for every opportunity that I get. I think Michael Malone made the right call, as unexpected as it might be, because of what Russell Westbrook was brought in to be. I think it was the right move. And he mentioned both of these things last night. Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic right now is one of the most offensively efficient duos in the NBA. Their production level is one of the best duos, period, in the NBA. And over the last month, Russell Westbrook has been a better defensive player than Christian Braun. So I understand why Michael Malone made the change that he did. But the thing about it, it didn't lead to a win. You got the same result. You made the right move, but you still lost. So I'm not going to say this is deck chairs on the Titanic, because that would be overly dramatic. And the Denver Nuggets are still a very good basketball team. But let's be honest, it's championship or bust. That's what this season is. It's championship or bust. And judging them on that level, there is another Eastern Conference heavyweight that they have fallen short against. They've had the season series taken from them in a sweep by Cleveland and now by the Knicks. They will play the Boston Celtics here soon. And you don't even have to bring up the past with Oklahoma City. You can just objectively tell that Oklahoma City right now is a better team than the Denver Nuggets. Oh my God, are they doing trivia? I'm sorry. I looked up at my TV. They're Joe Burrow, Drake May, and Russell Wilson are facing off with Jared Goff, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield. Where is the remote? Get off of my television set. Although that might go as well as Celebrity Jeopardy. Anyway, the Denver Nuggets still, with Michael Malone making the right moves, making moves that make sense and in some ways work. Remember when Aaron Gordon on the bench worked for a couple of weeks or a week? He's making the right moves and still the result is the same. That's not good. That's a problem. And last night, Nikola Jokic, after the game, said that the Knicks are a top 5 NBA championship contender, which, doing the math in my head, I would agree. But it is in line with a lot of comments recently for Nikola Jokic that, given the backdrop of the way this Nuggets season is going, I can't help but link the two. Nikola Jokic has talked on multiple occasions about how he is playing the best basketball of his life. He has allowed that the Nuggets win against the Sixers was proof that they were now getting serious. He has repeatedly talked about how this team is not where they need to be. He has now mentioned that the Knicks are a top 5 NBA contender. I think implying that the Nuggets are not as good as a top 5 NBA contender. And also his play. He hasn't been very good 2 out of the last 3 games. I think Nikola Jokic is getting a bit run down. Not with the workload, but with playing on a team that he knows cannot win a championship as currently constructed. And he's saying a lot of these things. I think it's his way to put some pressure on the front office, because he's never going to be that guy. He's never going to become Jimmy Butler. He's never going to become LeBron James. I just think and maybe even it's subconscious. I don't think he's intentionally sending a message. I just think he's being honest. He's being honest. And he's saying we're not good enough. Meanwhile, I am every bit good enough to win another title. In fact, I'm better than I was when we won a title. There's some subconscious things, I think, going on with a lot of what Nikola Jokic is saying. And I think that he is tired of playing this season on a team that cannot win a title. And that's what he wants to do. So Tyler texts in, do you think the Nuggets should make a trade? 1,000% I do. I think they should. I think they need to. Here's the flip side. They really can't. They really can't. This idea of all this flexibility that they would have because they're under the second apron, it's nonsense. It was just to pacify the fan base. It was. They don't have flexibility. They don't. All of these contracts that I see that are being dangled out there, the Nuggets can't afford them. They can't make them work. They can't trade Aaron Gordon. They can't trade Jamal Murray, even if they wanted to. They can't make a lot of these contracts work. And even the more menial contracts, they can't fit in. Because no one's going to take Zeke Naji. This team needs to make a move. I said the other day, I think they have to put all their eggs into the buyout market, which is not supposed to be the case. If you're under the second apron, you shouldn't just have to do the buyout market. You should be able to make trades, but yet the Nuggets can't. And I think that's abundantly clear when you watch this team. And I think Nikola Jokic if you listen to him, if you watch him, I think he's sending those signals. Story number 2 is a happier story. It's a story of head coaches in the NBA, same head coaches who I was just talking about the game of last night, pushing back against the terrible thought of Adam Silver, which is to shorten NBA quarters down to 10 minutes. Michael Malone said, I hope we're not going to turn into Barnum and Bailey. Circus, right? Doing all of these things. He was talking about the 4-point line, shortening quarters. He almost spoke as if it insulted him as a lifelong NBA guy, as with his father being such a prominent figure in the NBA's history. To hear Adam Silver resort to these kind of cheap little tricks to make the NBA product better, I can understand why Michael Malone would be a little put off by the whole thing. He didn't like it, and Tom Thibodeau said that what I've been saying since this discussion about the quality of the NBA came up. It's competitiveness. Heard of it. It's the economy, stupid. It's the competitiveness, stupid. It's not the length of the game. I'm not saying it's perfect, but that's not the bigger point. And Tom Thibodeau last night said, if we focus on the competitiveness, everything else will take care of itself. And to that, I said, thank you. That's exactly what I said yesterday on the show. The biggest problem with the NBA, above everything else, it's not marketing. It's not length of the game. It's not even video replay review. I'm not saying that can't be improved, but that's not the problem. The problem is people tune in and expecting a better product than they're getting. Their stars are being load managed. Their teams are just jacking up threes, and the other team is almost somehow powerless to stop them. You have foul merchants that are getting that. That's part of competitiveness. Tom Thibodeau is saying, let them play. Stop letting Harden and Embiid and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander go to the line 20 times in a game. Let people play defense on them. Now, I probably shouldn't loop in SGA with that group. But he's getting the line a lot, and not every one of those is a deserved foul. Right? A lot of ticky-tack stuff gets a guy to shoot 21 free throws. Let these teams play. Let there be some physicality. Have them out there on the floor. Don't low manage them so much. The competitive nature of the NBA, it doesn't feel nearly as competitive as it did. And that's going to come off as a back in my day. And I guess I'm getting up there in age, so be it. Back in my day, the NBA was more competitive than it is right now. And I'm not talking about parity. I'm talking about the games. There's just no lack of there's a lack of urgency. Too many games. The product isn't good inside the game. Shortening it to 10-minute quarters is not going to fix that. But Adam Silver can't say that. Or doesn't want to admit it. Either one. But people in his league, smart people, well-respected people, and Tom Thibodeau and Michael Malone know exactly what's up. And story number 3 is that we are getting a new professional sports team in the state of Colorado as the NWSL has announced that Denver will be their next expansion franchise, and they will start play in 1 year. Well, 14 months. Feels quick. But that's what it's going to be. The NWSL that continues to grow, not at the same trajectory as the WNBA, but is certainly growing exponentially given where they have been in the past. I think it's a great thing. I think there's a market for it. There's an appetite for it. It's a league that's in a really good spot. I think they have enough stars that can drive some of that because let's be honest, the Broncos are really the only team that it really doesn't matter who they play. And even then, there are games that people look more forward to. But some of the desire for people to go to these sporting events in any city or any state is who are they playing? You could get Trinity Rodman playing in Colorado. You could get Mallory Pugh, Swanson playing in Colorado. You get Sophia Smith. And I would say the first order of business for this Denver NWSL team is to figure out a way to get Lindsey Horan back from France and make her the face of your franchise. I mean, good luck. She's like third in her league in scoring, but one can dream. I think it has a chance to work. Certainly. If it were, because both the WNBA and the NWSL have considered Denver as an expansion site. For me as a consumer, I think I'd be slightly more excited or slightly more inclined to go up to Denver to watch the WNBA than I would the NWSL. But I would certainly, this time next year, go to an NWSL game over an MLS game and over an MLB game in Denver. So if I'm going to Denver next summer or spring or really fall, because it goes March to November for a sporting event, but really during the summer is what we're talking about. During the summer, I'll take the NWSL and this Denver team over the Rapids and the Rockies. I think for Denver to be able, and in the WNBA thing, it's kind of out of their control. They're trying to capitalize on the moment. They're trying to be a part of the growth of popularity of these leagues. They're trying to, but there are other cities that are in front of them in the queue when it comes to the WNBA. But I think it could work and work pretty well. Women's soccer in Colorado, that's been in a good place for a long time. 3 of the best players on planet Earth are from Colorado. I think it could really work. I just would prefer the WNBA over NWSL. But I'll take your thoughts because that's the question I want to ask. Because we have to really want to go up to Denver, right? We have a lot of choices for things to do down here for sure. The travel, the extra investment. Would the NWSL team in Denver get your dollar? Are you intrigued? Are you intrigued enough to check out a match next year? I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313 is the number. Two of the bigger topics today. I just mentioned them and what's driving the show, but the two that have kind of caught on a little bit and you're responding to, which is what I live for. The NWSL team coming to Denver and Adam Silver's terrible idea to fix the NBA. Brett says, I have been in and out listening to you today. What's our new professional team? I'm hoping it's Cornhole, the National Cornhole League of America Cornhole League. Please tell me it's so, Ryan. No. Sorry. It's not. It's not cornhole. It's not pickleball. It's not the World Poker Tour. It's better. It's the NWSL. But you knew that. Good text, though. I think this is a really good point about the NWSL team in Denver and any potential teams either here in Colorado Springs or up in Denver or anywhere in Colorado in the future. From the 719, fans won't support bad teams, especially in the lower tier sports league. Bad sports just aren't entertaining. We used to watch the Nuggets dirt cheap only when stars were in town. And that is pretty true of any market, right? Everybody loves a winner. Everybody is more likely to go out and see a winner. And I do think that that's part of it. But we in Colorado have a lot of transplants, right? Now, the NWSL team, eventually, somebody can say, I'm a lifelong fan of this team. They're just coming in. But a lot of people that are like, I don't really care to really support the local sports teams because I'm not from here. And so I think more so in this state, is that the case where you got to win? Got to win, right? Like there are other places, and Colorado just has a lot to do, right? Especially when the weather's nice. A lot of different things you can do. So to go out and pay money to support a losing team in a secondary league, it's going to be an even more uphill climb in a place like Colorado than some of these other places that have less to do. So I think it's a great point. The Rockies are the thing that defies everything, but we know why people go to Rockies games. It's partly what you said about the Nuggets, right? It's a cheap way to be able to watch, Shohei Ohtani or Aaron Judge and then it's Coors Field and all that. It's really one of the more fascinating case studies on how I think a state that is very driven by teams that win. We love teams that win, and we don't like to go see, because even though you said that we used to go to the Nuggets games for dirt cheap to watch other things, I went to those games. There weren't a lot of people there. But the Rockies kind of go counter to all of that. But we know it's not because there are just these diehard Rocky fans that are going to show up each and every season no matter what. It's all these other things. In fact, I think that the diehard Rockies fans are less prevalent at Rockies games. than they have been in years past. I think they're getting supplanted more by the casuals, more by the party deck crowd. But the fact that their attendance is what it is, given how straight garbaggio they are, it really runs counter because the Nuggets, when they're bad, nobody shows up. Avs might be an exception too, but even then, when they first got McKinnon, there was some lean years in terms of attendance. Broncos saw the no-shows, and then as you go down too, like Rapids, look, no, they're last in attendance in MLS. I mentioned this earlier because they're not any good. Got to put a good team out on the field, no doubt about it. Alex wants to fix the NBA, and I appreciate him doing that. He says, I think one of the biggest problems with the NBA is the frequency of timeouts. Every single time a team takes a timeout, they go on a long extended commercial break on top of the TV timeouts. This is a bigger problem than the length of quarters. That's your first part. I'll get into your second part, Alex. I think you're right. Right? I think if you keep me engaged by not going to timeout forever, I think that would help more than shortening the quarters. I'm 100% with you on that, Alex. But again, football takes a lot of breaks, right? So it's not the biggest issue, but certainly if we're ranking them, I agree with you that cutting down the number of timeouts would do more than shortening the quarters. But Adam Silver won't do that. Why? Money. Your second part of your text. You had no chance at breaking any kind of scoring records. And that's part of what people go. And that's a great point. I will say in Adam Silver's defense, though, he did mention setting that aside. When he was on Dan Patrick yesterday and he was talking about this, he did say the ramifications of our record book aside. Because that's a really big deal. But I am talking about this with the idea that, yes, that is a huge impediment to this happening. But the idea that forgetting the record book, it would actually work, it wouldn't, because that's not the problem. It's not the problem. The length of the game is not the issue. Perfect example. I don't know why I spent so much time talking about it. I can absolutely bring it up right now, make the case. Soccer. Soccer is the shortest of all of these sports. It takes no significant investment in time to watch soccer. And look, soccer's not what it was 20 or 30 years ago. Like, people are into it more in this country than they ever have been. But why? And I get there are other reasons. It's not the top league in the world and all that. But if the magic bullet was to shorten up the length of the game, then I think soccer would be more popular than it is. If that's what it is, we just want. It's not that. I know it's not what Adam Silver says it is. It's just he's not willing to give up any money, which means he won't shorten the season, which would help. He's not going to limit the number of timeouts because it makes money. And he's not going to antagonize the players' union by saying we're not playing hard. I get it. He's in a tough spot, but what he's doing to try and fight out of that tough spot, not really good. Alan says the only way I can see the Rockies is to actually go to their game. Can't find them on TV. That's fair. That's fair. And in a weird way, wouldn't that benefit the Rockies? I mean, their attendance numbers were down this year. But wouldn't the fact that they're not on TV in some ways benefit them? You can't stay home. You have to witness the Rockies live and in person. Perhaps not when you are a team that is where the Rockies are right now. And Albert wants to talk about the Utah Hockey Club. We're one step closer to it being called Utah Hockey Club. In the amount of gear, I don't care. I don't care about any possible rivalry between Utah and Colorado. If they stay Utah Hockey Club, and even if they don't, if they change the name, then that means the Utah Hockey Club gear will be lowered in price, and that's when I will pounce. But I will get so much Utah Hockey Club gear, which is to say a couple of things, because I don't really wear a lot of sports teams paraphernalia. Utah Hockey Club is what they need to be. They're down to 3. Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoth, and Utah Outlaws, and people have rightly pointed out those are both lacrosse teams in Colorado. And the one state over, Utah is going to be named one of those 2 teams, Utah Hockey Club. Albert has a different suggestion. He says the Fighting Missionaries making gains for the name of the Utah NHL team. I would point out 2 issues with that. Albert, I don't think that you're correct, and I don't think that name would catch on for 2 very key reasons. One, I don't think that missionaries would appreciate being labeled as violent. I think that's kind of the antithesis of what they want to be. And I also believe that name might be a bit prone to parody. Right? Because no matter how old we are, sometimes our sense of humor is still that of a preteen. So there would be some jokes. Cool name. I don't think it's going to work. All the more reason to stick with Utah Hockey Club. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, CSU joins the trend that is all the rage today in college football, hiring a general manager. I'll tell you who it is because I think you might know him. Coming up next on Extra Sports 1300. I just saw that the NWSL team in Denver has already sold over 2,000 season tickets. I think it was 2,000. Let me double check that. 2 or 1? But look, I think it's going to work. I think people are interested in it. I think it's the right time, certainly, to have one of these leagues, whether it's NWSL or WNBA, come to Colorado. So today's good day for the sports landscape in Colorado, and I think they will do very well, and I hope they do very well. Colorado State football is joining the fray in looking for someone to basically head up NIL, which isn't NIL. So it's funny. So these people are being hired as general managers. They're not general managers. They are in charge of raising money for NIL. And then it's not NIL. It's essentially salary. How much are you going to pay these football players to play for you? So none of the title is actually what these people do. But at any rate, the Rams are getting former Pittsburgh Steelers general manager, Kevin Colbert, to help them out. He is being hired as a consultant to help them set up essentially a front office. Bill Belichick has Michael Lombardi. St. Bonaventure basketball has Adrian Wojnarowski. Stanford has Andrew Luck. And now CSU will have somebody, which is, I think it's a necessity. It just is. It's so much more complicated that the coach can't be everything. Now, there is an exception. And that would be Deion Sanders, because it seems like he's kind of in charge of a lot of the NIL stuff. Like, he talks to the people that sponsor him, and he's like, how about some money for thee? But I think this is a good move for Colorado State. I think it's a necessary move. It's just the way that college athletics are going, and I thought there was supposed to be a pivot back the other way, but it sure doesn't look like anybody's bracing for one. Gotta get one of these people. You can't ask Jay Norvell to recruit and to coach and to do all the public facing things, be the face of the program, and also handle all the NIL stuff. So we'll see who Kevin Colbert comes up with. And Air Force, the offer still stands. If you want someone to run your name, image, and likeness, I'm your dude. That joke cracks me up every time, and I have gotten maybe barely a chuckle out of anybody. It's good. It's good. You got to think about it. Think about why that would be a humorous situation. And why it's humorous that I'm campaigning for that position. And then you'll only mildly appreciate it. It's actually not that great of a joke. I mean, it's maybe a is about it. What else did I not get to today? No one except Nikola Jokic is going to the All-Star game. Not surprising. But the reserves were announced, and Nikola Jokic is the only Nugget that will be participating in the game. I found this a little bit humorous, like legitimately, not like Ryan Kaufman humor funny. Victor Wembanyama was complaining. Wemby was complaining about the fact that he's not getting foul calls. He is fed up with shoves and unfair lack of calls. He said it feels unfair. It's just frustration, no matter who it was. He doesn't believe he gets a fair whistle from officials. And Victor Wembanyama might be right, but dude, there is a guy that you just recently played that would be like, seriously, you're complaining? Victor Wembanyama is complaining? He hasn't reached the status in the NBA yet to get all the calls. And if he did, it would be madness. And that's why he's frustrated, because he's like, I'd be dominating more so than he already is if he got calls. It's too early for that, Victor. Put that under your hat. Don't bring that back out. Okay, you're in your second year in the league. You cannot be complaining about an unfair whistle. And there are other big men in the league who have been certainly dealing with what you're dealing with for a very long time. But also, isn't that kind of part of one of the big discussions today about Adam Silver's idea to fix the NBA? So you have essentially the NBA is split into two groups of players. They're the players that are foul merchants, get all the calls, and shoot an ungodly amount of free throws every game. And the other half of the league are guys complaining that they're not allowed to be that guy. Right? So Embiid, Harden, Shea, they all have, to some degree, a foul merchant mentality. And then you have Victor Wembanyama, who wants to be a foul merchant. You have Nikola Jokic, who complains every single call that goes against him. Luka Doncic, who complains about every single call that he doesn't get. So essentially, in the NBA, you're either a foul merchant or you're complaining that you're not allowed to be a foul merchant because you're not getting all the calls. Adam Silver, are you noticing this? Are you seeing this? Are you hearing this? Do you understand what the bigger issue with your league is? You have guys that get all the calls and guys that complain that they don't get all the calls. Fix that first, and we'll worry about quarter length. All right, that's it for today. Appreciate your patronage. Really good conversation. Thank you for it with the NWSL team and also Adam Silver's bold strategies. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 3 right here on Extra Sports 1300.